Good evening. I'm Mark Harrington, and today I'm going to be talking to Sean Harrington, a private Irish tutor in the local area. So Sean, how did you first become associated with the Irish language?
Well, I was fortunate enough that I grew up in Jehuma back in the 60s, and at the time it was a place where a lot of Irish was still spoken, and we were required to speak Irish in national school. And as well as that, my mother was a fluent speaker, so was my grandmother. My dad wasn't, so that meant basically that we grew up in a bilingual household, which was great because it meant that I got fluent in two languages for the price of one from a very early age.
When did you first start to speak Irish?
Right from the start, I suppose, even before I went to national school. As I say, my mother was fluent, and she started me off, bilingually. So in national school at the time, everything was done through Irish, which meant that you were actually required to speak it in the playground as well, but some did, some didn't. But certainly by the time I was sorted through the national school cycle, I would have been quite fluent. What happened then was, it was sort of the 70s, I ended up here in Belmullet in the convent, and the last thing you'd want to be doing there was to be heard speaking Irish, so basically it was all pretty much put to one side for years. And at the end of the 70s I ended up going to England, which meant that I didn't get much practice of speaking it there either. And ultimately I didn't get involved with Irish again properly until I came back from England in the year 2000, and I began to take an interest in it again.
Tell me about the methods you use.
Well, after I came back from England, I realised that even though I could speak the language, I didn't understand the grammar fully. So I started to ask myself questions about, for instance, why would you have something like lár and lay, which is the middle of the day, but the middle of the night is lár na hiha. So I figured there was something going on there. There's a thing called the Tissue Ginija, which obviously I'd heard of, but I wanted to explore it more. So I teach Irish, therefore, from a grammatical standpoint, which doesn't suit everybody, but I find it's very successful.
Did you ever encounter anyone you couldn't teach?
It's rarely happened. I find that most of the people that I encounter seem to buy into what I do. And I always, funnily enough, I always tell people right at the start, first class, I say, if the chemistry isn't working, or if you feel that this isn't going to work for you, let me know and we'll cut our losses and no harm done. But there have been one or two people over the years, one person in particular, highly intelligent man, a professional. I won't say what profession he's in, to be giving the game away, but basically we couldn't get to first base, whatever. He reckons that he was unteachable, and other people had tried to teach him Irish as well. I thought I was going to work the oracle, but it didn't happen, so basically we just laughed about it and he walked away. But he's the only one I can think of off the top of my head who the thing didn't work with,
What is your fondest memory of teaching Irish?
Well, I enjoy it as a general rule. Probably my favourite means of teaching Irish would be one-on-one to adults, because you can kind of go wherever you want to. But I remember there was one young man that came to me. He'd got a C in ordinary level in the junior cert, and he'd managed to somehow persuade the teachers to give him another shot in the higher level on the senior cycle. So he ended up coming to me for 2 years, and he got an A2 in higher level Irish, and he's gone on to pretty decent things from there. And I was quite pleased about that, because he worked really hard and we got a result, so that would be one of the highlights.
Do you prefer private tuition or school teaching?
Well, I taught in the convent after I came back from England for 7 years. Unfortunately, local events conspired to have me removed from that job, but I did really enjoy the teaching in front of a class. It was really, it invigorated me, and I really enjoyed going in there every morning. But to be honest, I enjoy teaching individuals and indeed private classes as well, because there's always a bit of a sort of a vibe going on, there's always a bit of crack, which you couldn't always have in the convent, even though it did happen more often than not. But I couldn't honestly say. I think they were both really good, to be quite honest.
What are the greatest difficulties encountered by people learning Irish?
I think it's the fear factor. It's the fact that people have this ingrained mistrust and hostility, and I suppose fear would probably not be too strong a word, because of the fact that Irish has been taught inadequately and people have been coerced into learning it as opposed to being encouraged. So the first thing I have to do normally, whether it's somebody coming in that's in 6th class in the national school or somebody in middle age who wants to learn to speak the language fluently, is I have to kind of break down this reserve that they've got and let them see that the language is learnable, is teachable. there's difficulty involved because grammatically it's very, very difficult, but that's where I pretty much, shine out, because I have developed this specific means of teaching the language through the grammar, which people seem to buy into. So once I've broken down that sort of reserve, I think we normally can make progress.
So what are your plans for the future?
Well, people are on to me to write an Irish book basically to tutor people in Irish, but I'm not sure whether I want to do that because there's loads of them on the market already. I have got a slightly different approach, but it would involve, I suppose, a DVD and everything that entails. So I don't know whether I go there or not. I do a certain amount of translation as well, so I'm hoping to maybe build a little bit on that as the economy improves, and maybe I'll start getting a little bit more work in that area as well. But by and large, I'm happy enough tutoring people, either individuals or groups. And I wouldn't rule out going back to second level again, because I enjoy that as well, but it's a pretty fluid situation at the moment.
That was very interesting, and I want to thank you for taking the time to answer my questions.
My pleasure. Thank you.
See you soon.